Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. If this is your first time listening, typically my colleague Amanda and I, we host a new wellness guest every week, and we release our new episodes on Sunday. Right now, at least for a couple months, Amanda is out taking care of a new little baby, so it's just me and guests for right now, which is totally fine. She's keeping me updated on the little one, so be sure to like, subscribe, follow us so that way you don't miss out on any of the new episodes. Last week, we had another return guest. We had Dr. Leslie Cook. She came back and her episode last week, if you haven't watched it, make sure you go back and watch that. We were talking all about how parents can be a support to their child on their coming out journey, things that they can expect at different points in that child's journey, all the way up until late teen, early adulthood. So it was a really good one. It's another area that Dr. Leslie is very well versed in. This week, we're back with another installment of our Trauma and Chakra Healing series with Lisa Schaefer. So as always, welcome back, Lisa. Thanks for joining us again.
Oh, thank you, Kelsi. I just love sharing space with you and Amanda, and I know she's here in spirit, so.
100%.
So just to do a quick overview, so we've talked about the root chakra, which is the chakra that keeps us grounded. We've talked about the sacral chakra, which is about our creative and sexual energy. We've talked about the solar plexus chakra, which is the center of our personal power. Our last episode was on the heart chakra, where it starts to leave the physical part. So those first three are considered the physical chakras. And then we start getting into that more heady, spiritual, whatever kind of words you want to use, intuitive. And so the throat chakra is the first of those three. And so we're going to talk, it's really interesting. Because as the heart is kind of like the pivotal point for the lower three and the upper three, I think the throat is a really pivotal point as well, because it connects to our heart and our third eye. And we're going to talk a lot about how that kind of can come through, I think, in therapy and in trauma. So the throat chakra kind of is where it sounds, where it's at. It is literally energetically at the center of your throat. It's located on the cervical plexus of the spine. Yeah. And so it begins at the base of our throat. And so it kind of continues all the way up into like our nasal passages. So think about like jaw, ears, being able to breathe. If you're congested, I don't know about you, but when the leaves fall, sadly, I am allergic to whatever it is that happens to that. And so like that is sometimes, part of my fall weather, as we were talking about the fall, getting ready for the fall. It is also linked with the element ether. And ether is the space that forms the essence of emptiness. So again, when we're talking about that spiritual realm and what is above us, right? So that kind of starts us getting into more of the, I guess, woo-woo part of Reiki, chakras, yoga, and this connection to spirit and self and how that's connected to each other.
I've never heard of that one, which again, I'm very green. I'm very much a beginner when it comes to the chakras and things. And I know whenever I went and got my own Reiki done, like I was more so out of line. I wasn't fully blocked, she said, but mine was like the lower ones, like the root and the sacral. So I'd done some of my own research on those because they applied to me. So I was excited for today because I haven't heard of that element at all. Like that was literally the first time I've heard of it, the ether.
Yeah. And think about, so the color is a brilliant blue. So you know, we were talking before the sky and how the sky is a reflection of the water, right? And so that is, again, that part that's above us. The symbol is a lotus that has 16 petals around it, and each of the petals has a Sanskrit vowel that represents a different melodic tone. So it's a really pretty symbol that I will not do justice trying to describe it on the podcast. But
right, I know we talked about like the story of the lotus, and when you led us in that meditation, how we tied that in there as well. But so
yeah.
like it comes full circle. Like I knew that they built off of one another because they have to be in line. But then as we've walked through these in more detail, I'm like, it makes sense why, you know, everything flows, because everything literally is connected in so many deeper ways.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And as we kind of go into this, again, looking at that spiritual kind of realm that we're walking into in these next three chakras, it does kind of open up that idea of intuition and self-knowledge. And as therapists, right, we are trying to empower our clients to be in connection to that.
Yes.
Yeah. So another really fun fact is that the idea comes from the Greek word meaning upper air as well. And so again, kind of looking at beyond the clouds, up, space, time, spatial, all of that fun stuff when it comes to the word ether. The interesting thing is that because of where it is located, like in the face and in the throat, the physical sense. So each chakra is related to like a physical sense, and the throat is related to hearing. So how important is hearing to communication, right?
Wow. Oh, my brain's doing so many things.
Yeah, and so our throat, where we speak out of, but then our ears, where we hear the things, is part of that conversation. And so when we talk about blockages, and when we kind of talk a little bit more in depth about blockages, it's all about communication at this level, and the communication on whether it's coming up from the heart or coming down from the third eye, and where some of those blockages might be as well.
Yeah, I've heard like with this, and I was going to ask because I was like, oh, again, I'm still learning about all of these, so I could be totally wrong. But I've heard as we got to this point, it confirmed what I like my very general knowledge of. I've heard, you know, the throat chakra being connected with speaking your truth, but not just speaking it, but then having that kind of communication. So it ties into your own intuition, you know, trusting yourself, being able to speak that, but then also taking that in from others as well.
Yeah. And when we think about, like, when we were talking about the heart chakra at the last episode, but having that unconditional love, embracing love, giving love, and then how do we speak that to other people? And unfortunately, if we were in situations where unloving things or unkind things were said to us, how does that impact our heart chakra, our throat chakra, and then all the rest of our being, right?
Yes, I immediately, when we were talking about the intuition being helping our clients be in tune with that, I immediately made a link with trauma, which all of these, of course, are linked with trauma. But as far as, you know, them being more in tune and you know, that self-love and that space, rather than those things that were, you know, planted within them, or in this sense it sounds like can cause those blockages for them.
Right. And so again, thinking about speaking your truth, so we kind of talked about that, but how do we declare love to another person? How was that role modeled for us?
Yes.
And when we work with clients that haven't had that role model, either because of healthy or unhealthy or dysfunctional role models, or we enter into dysfunctional relationships, how we declare love, even, coming up again through the heart chakra. How do we express our beliefs? Unfortunately, there's a lot of polarization in our world right now about, how we view people who may be in people of color or LGBTQ community. How do we express our beliefs? How do we find and expound on like philosophy? So again, like, are you gathering new information to kind of add to your experiences already? Are you open to that? Are you open to the feedback? A lot of times, our clients will come to therapy and, maybe they're ready for change, but maybe that change yet is still really scary. And so we can kind of walk them through some necessary steps that might need to be taken.
Open to, there's a it reminds me of the stages of change and different things. Or us, we can only control if I'm approaching an individual, like someone of color, or it goes back to that modeling, like you were saying. I'm all over the place because my brain's all over the place, but how is it modeled for them of treating individuals with that love, expressing that love, treating others in that way? Was it modeled that racism and homophobia or being closed-minded when it comes to somebody else's philosophy? It all makes, is it fair to say that that's created blockages for those people as well?
Yeah.
And then, and other individuals on the other side of that, how that impacts them, like, so intertwined.
Because we're all energetically connected. And I think, that's the one theme, that I am trying to share through this series, is that everything has vibration. We are all connected. We need each other. We cannot live independently. We are wired for connection. And through this, whether you call it self-actualization, if we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's not a destination. We don't get our master's degree and know all of the things, right? Like, we still have to do continuing education. I know you're a very intuitive person when it comes to seeking out information that will be helpful, right? So we get a client, we might not know what intervention to use, but we're going to do that research to help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And studying prayer, so again, we're talking more about this spiritual realm, and especially for those who may have had negative experiences with church or religion, how can they connect prayer? And for me, what kind of comes to mind are those people who are in 12-step meetings who really struggle with identifying having a power greater than themselves.
Yes, I work a lot. It's kind of a theme in my, I'm sure it's related to geography and all the things, but a lot of my caseload, or at least a solid theme, is those deconstructing, their organized, religion, and we're processing like, okay, I'm deconstructing this, but that doesn't mean that I have to throw all of it away, so to speak. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, we've been programmed to think that I, have to fall into all of these structures that have been put in place around it. So how can I still incorporate these things and it be tied to my truth and be tied to what represents love, and these things tied to the throat chakra?
And I think it's a really great point to make, is we start to explore and expand outside of the binary, and it is a yes and.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not an either or.
So many, it's like they've had, like you said, like religious, and it is what it is, religious trauma. And it's like a yes, and I still align with a lot of these principles and things, whether it's Christianity or whatever. And because that's just what's the most predominant in my area. And it's like, those things can exist at the same time. You can take what resonates for you, what speaks to you, and leave the rest, or expand on what speaks to you and into a different space that you've never been before.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things is singing. So I love music. I love to listen to music, but not only the actual part of using your vocal cords to sing, but then listening again, hearing that music. And so how therapeutic is music to, maybe it's motivation, you know, like when you work out or when you're house cleaning, or maybe I know I was sharing this story a couple weeks ago. My husband and I, we went to go ride our bikes, and somehow, some reason, I had 2 flat tires, and I was just, let's just say, really upset about it because we didn't have a tire pump. And so on the way home, driving from the trails where we were going to go, like literally windows down, the music was up. I was like screaming the lyrics to the top of my lungs at stop signs, didn't care. Like I got a thumbs up from one guy, and I was like, he gets it. Like he totally feels what I'm feeling right now.
You're connected. We're all connected. Really connected right now, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So song is, you know, again, really important to an expression of how we feel, whether it's you know, a rock song or hip hop or pop, or maybe it's even love songs and we're lamenting about something.
I listen to music. I never realized how much, I mean, yes, music tied to my mood, but just like that, whatever the activities that I'm doing, I notice the music being very different. And anybody who knows me, I listen to music in the shower too. Every time I shower, almost, unless I want it to be quiet. But definitely when I'm physically active. But yeah, I mean, do I sing in the car? Yes, but that's where I feel like society makes you feel like you have to be good at it to call it singing. I'm like, no, that's not. I'm in my car by myself. Such a good feeling.
Oh, the best. Really the best. It's my favorite. If you ever see me driving, I'm straight up having a concert in my car, and I don't care. It's one of,
or give me a thumbs up, like if you're feeling it too.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when I see people just like jamming out in their car, for sure.
Walking down the sidewalk with earbuds in, and just like, or somebody if I'm at the gym and you can see they're listening to a good song. It's like it goes like with this chakra. It makes me feel like it makes us I mean, we can be connected if other people are in that moment with us, but then if it's something that we're doing with ourselves, feel so connected. I think that's why it feels so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, through our throat chakra, this is the place where we are able to ask questions, to express our wants, to express our needs. And so then, you know, again, as we look at trauma or childhood trauma or generational trauma, how have those experiences been open or closed? You know, especially I know going outside of the family to talk about familial problems, right? And so how can we ask what we need then when everything has been, you know, don't go and don't tell family secrets.
Right. Or I've asked those primary people in my life for what I've needed, or I've looked to them for what I've needed, and I've gotten to where I just stopped asking. You know, then we can see how that can, you know, people can go out to relationships, and whether it's codependency on that end of the spectrum, or just, you know, I'm going to focus on what everybody else needs, and I don't release those things for myself.
Yeah. So really important work at this level, because it is important to have that connection to our spirit self, to our knowing, to our intuition. And this is the channel for that, to have ascension, people who are ascending or who are reaching self-actualization, if they don't speak their truth, it's interesting to me sometimes when, and you may experience this, when I'm meeting with people and they're like, yeah, I have great self-esteem. And I'm like, but these things that you're doing here goes against yourself as a person. So how can you say that you have good self-esteem when either what you're valuing or the behaviors are opposite?
Right. And that triggers for me a conversation I have a lot with my clients is the difference between self-esteem and self-worth. And it's like they can be treating them, saying maybe I'm presenting myself in an esteemed way, but then the ways that I'm treating myself is way less than what I deserve. Or I'm, it's very interesting, and it's like, yeah, well, I have, my self-esteem's pretty good, and then you look at these behaviors or the things that they're doing in day-to-day life, and it's perpetuating a lot of dysfunction that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
How
And yeah, and the self-talk, if you make a mistake, what is that language that you say to yourself? And it kind of goes back, and I know it's a cliche, is like, would you say the same things to a friend or a loved one that we say to ourselves?
Right. I always use that because I'm a client. I think all of us who are here, we in mental health, we use a ton of like metaphors, analogies, and things for visuals. And I always use the one of if you imagine you're on the sidelines watching a friend run a marathon, and it's like, are you going to be saying these things to them when they're doing something that's so hard or like a goal of theirs? Or are you going to tell them like, you're wearing the wrong shoes, I can't believe that you didn't eat this morning, like, man? And like, is that going to build them up and push them and in a helpful way? No. But that's what we do to ourselves, and I'm just as guilty as the next person very often. I catch it all
yeah. Yeah. The language part is so powerful. Like, we don't realize like how powerful even the things that we don't physically say, because that's the really interesting part of the throat chakra, is that we don't have to physically say it. That's where that third eye kind of comes in, or that heartfelt, do I feel connected and do I feel like I belong? And maybe I'm not saying those things, but it's the unspoken part as well.
And that saying that came to my brain was, if we're not speaking it, I'm storing it. It's still there, but it could be just getting, stored and implanted and blocking so many other things.
Well, and looking at everything has vibration, right? And everything is connected through that vibration. Think about when you're in a social situation and someone comes into the room. How does the energetic nature shift?
Right. It could depend on that other person, probably, like, and you could probably feel, things get, I don't know, maybe physically feel tense, or maybe physically feel like just uncomfortable, or the opposite. Maybe that person brings like really great energy to the room, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, this person feels like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And what I was thinking is, when clients, especially my kiddos, might anticipate a parent coming home because their parent might be in who knows what kind of a mood.
Yes.
Maybe today is going to be a good day. Maybe today is not going to be a good day. And how are we going to
Get a read.
live our life in this 24 hours based on that?
Hypervigilance, that constant state of noticing those little micro shifts in order to, okay, what's that micro shift in energy or demeanor or whatever, represent for me right now? What do I need to do to keep myself safe or get my needs met?
Yeah. And maybe that's shut up and be quiet and be unseen and unheard.
Mm. Mm. And then I picture, my brain jumps to that parent or that person in their life, the modeling of that love, or, if they come home from work, if that's our, story right now, if they come home from work, is it, oh my gosh, how was your day? I love you, but, hey, here was how my day was. We'll have dinner in a little bit together or something, or all of the other side of the spectrum ways that could go. They're coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. And because sound is connected to the spirit, there's other ways that we can experience that vibration, right? And my all-time favorite, and this is a shout out to my favorite sound bath person, Auburn. She does this amazing crystal bowl sound bath. If you've never experienced, like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about how much I love going and listening to her sound baths. Crystal bowls are the bomb. If you've never experienced it in person, it is 100% life-changing. It is very spiritual, well, let's say it can be. It usually is for me, but it can be very spiritual in nature. Singing bowls are just the best. Like, when I'm really stressed, even at work, I will put on crystal singing bowls in the background so that I can have some semblance of grounding and calming. They are my go-to thing.
I never realized, again, I want to experience it in person, but TikTok comes up every episode. And because I'm on that side of TikTok so much, just last night I was sitting on, I think I was on the couch, and it was this girl. She owns like a crystal shop, like an online crystal shop. So she does like packing videos. They're so relaxing. But like, I'm just watching her do these little packing videos with different crystals. But then at the beginning of one, I like swiped, and then at the beginning of the next one was her doing, a cleansing, a sound bowl exercise, and she had an incense burning, and she's like, before we get started with the video, and then she did it, and I felt like this physical, and I could only imagine what that would feel like if it was an experience in person.
I have gone to a retreat, which, again, like, I just love the couple that puts these retreats together. They have a heart chakra bowl, but it has like a handle on it where they actually physically put the bowl on your body and play it.
Oh,
amazing feeling.
I can imagine, just only imagine what that'd be like.
Yeah. So not only are you getting the benefits of the crystal bowl, but then it's literally like on you. And tuning forks can do the same thing. But even if you don't have that ability to do that, right? If you've ever been to a concert, or again, listening to music in your car or whatever, like, being surrounded by that sound and feeling like the bass, that's vibrational, that's healing, that's therapeutic.
Yeah, and the frequencies, and again, it's probably a whole topic for another day, but different types of music, I'm assume, have different frequencies of vibration. So it probably makes sense as to why we're drawn to some types of music given the activity, whatever the activities we're doing.
Well, it reminds me of the science experiment where I think they play, like, what is it, like heavy metal grunge music to plants, and then they play classical music to plants.
I know what you're talking.
And the classical music always grows like so much more. Yeah.
Wow. It's like fascinating to me.
Yeah. And it's really, and what's also really interesting, because again, we're talking about spirit, we're talking about this upper realm of consciousness. Hospice nurses nurses have noted that hearing is like the last of the senses to leave before we depart the earth. So like there are accounts where people, even people who might not have like brain waves, and who may be like brain dead, but they can maybe still hear you and react to sound.
Wow.
Yeah, I was reading about that I just thought that was pretty phenomenal.
It's so, yeah, and for one, kudos to, I mean, anybody in our field, but a shout out to those who work in end of life and, you know, palliative care. Like, it's very difficult, but then learning this information makes me feel like, it makes me feel good that like there's those things that we can still experience or provide in that area that is still there, even in that energetically still there, even at end of life experience.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in more information on that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Wow.
Yeah, so the physical body, the endocrine system, and the gland that's most associated with the throat chakra is the thyroid. So again, when we think about people who have thyroid issues, thyroid cancers, those kinds of things, and for a brief little, physical lesson is the thyroid is the spot that's responsible for a metabolic function, right? It is deciding on how quickly or fast that we're going to process food, and how fast our brain gets our organs to absorb the nutrient. So
in that, and I feel, and again, I'm not a medical, you know, a general practitioner of anything, but like I feel like the thyroid is such any organ. All the organs are connected, but the thyroid, I feel like such a diverse. I feel like it's responsible for so many different functions. So I feel like, of course, it's there. It just makes sense.
Well, and it's the organ that's responsible from birth until death. Like it is part of our actual development from infancy to childhood through puberty into late adulthood. It is that organ that is part of those, I guess, maturations.
Yeah.
You know, like think about like when a female or a person who gets menstruation, you know, that's part of that process, right?
Yes.
It is controlled by the pituitary gland, and it sends messages on whether or not we need more or less hormone. So what we know about adverse childhood experiences is that when we are exposed to chronic stress and chronic traumas, that they can alter our DNA. We know this through generational trauma as well. And so when we look at family lines where they have the same physical health ailment, and again, I'm not a physical doctor, so this is just a hypothesis that I have, right? So our bodies keep the score. Mm-hmm. So if my mother and my grandmother all had thyroid issues, what trauma happened?
Yes. What trauma is what perpetuated, you know, and passed down.
Yeah.
And then those individuals who a lot of times end up in front of us in therapy, and how difficult it is to be the one to break that cycle of those things, and like still facing those things yourself, but trying to break that cycle to keep it from continuing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at combining this physical body with this spiritual self or the knowing self, and a lot of our clients that are stuck maybe in trauma responses are disconnected. They're not even connected to their physical body. So they're not grounded through their root chakra. They don't have a sense of power out of their solar plexus chakra. They're probably not feeling love or able to give love appropriately. So there's a lot of things that really go into this system that makes us who we are.
Right. And then that every single chakra along the way up until where we're at, this episode makes sense when those individuals at the beginning of treatment or when somebody experiences that trigger, all of those things coming back. And in that individual, if it brings me, to the throat chakra, somebody that's feeling stuck in that state of, basically survival mode, that trauma response, it's like they're not connected with themselves at all, like we've established. And then how am I supposed to express what I need or to meet my own needs or, all of those things if I am completely dysregulated and disconnected?
Well, and I know that there is probably a meme somewhere. I definitely know I've seen things on TikTok that, when we ask our clients a question and the response is, I don't know. Sometimes that can be really frustrating for a counselor because it's like, I can't help you if we can't get to the bottom of this. But the reality is they might not know because they're not connected. And so we really have to find that small kernel of sand to start to build, the foundation of therapy and treatment on. And so, there are days where I'm like digging through my toolbox thinking, okay, what's next? Because I don't know if you have, but I know I have plenty of times gone through a whole session where somebody's like, I don't know. That's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that. And I'm like, well, I appreciate you at least acknowledge that I'm even asking great questions.
Right. And that concept of the not knowing, it sounds like an obvious thing, but my mouth, I want to say it out loud, is I don't know because I'm not connected with my own knowing.
Yeah.
Like, duh. But it's like, holy cow. So you have to go underneath. Okay, what is it that I'm asking this person? And they're literally saying that I don't know. And it's like, okay, we kind of need to focus on that reconnection first. I'm asking this question to this person who is not connected to any part of themselves that is able to give them that answer. That's where I'm like, okay, how can we get reconnected to that knowing and get that back aligned and opened up where it needs to be?
Yeah. So again, kind of just wanting to make sure that we all understand that all of our chakras are really connected to one another. And the throat is the channel to our intuitive self that leads to the third eye and the crown chakras. And, the pituitary gland is the endocrine center where the third eye is. So the third eye is the center of intuition. And so again, all of these systems really do play on each other. And as we said in previous episodes and even today, we need to be aligned. Our foundation needs to be strong to build up. And when we are able to speak the truth of the third eye, so what we see, what we acknowledge, what we notice through the throat chakra, and the same as what we feel and our love, so there's very much an up and down at this kind of focal point here.
I was going to ask that. Sorry, I didn't want to. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, you're okay.
So in this situation, if we're with somebody who is completely disconnected in that state of survival, is it fair to say like it would be a helpful thing to go way down there and get that root, starting at the root?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, because we need the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus to have that physical realm. Like if I can't notice what I feel in my body when I experience my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to get up here? Right. And so,
yes. Yeah.
and I don't know, like what you do when you meet with kiddos, but when I meet with kiddos, I really try to focus on that mind-body connection. So what happens when you get angry? You know, is there a difference in physical feeling when you just get frustrated versus when you're like enraged? And like, I'll give them my examples. Like, I can tell that my palms start to get sweaty, or like when I'm really like pissed off, like my teeth will tingle, my ears get hot. Like, I know I need to like trainee time out, go take a walk. Like, nothing good is going to happen in that moment. And what a lot of our clients are unable to do is identify those physical markers at the earlier stages. And so what they believe is that they go from 0 to 60, when in fact, those markers have been there, they just haven't been in tune to it. Yeah, so when they can't identify those physical markers, then the client believes that they go from 0 to 60, but the reality is that they have been unaware or ignoring, maybe sometimes, these other physical cues that could have led them to choose a better coping mechanism.
Yes. Yes. You hear, I mean, kids, adults, you hear that. It's like, I just, it happens instantly. I'm enraged, and I'm like, it feels that way right now, but we can slow that down. It can be difficult, and we're not going to be perfect at it every time, but there's so many things that are happening physically, energetically, that are my body's natural way of telling me, like, hey, I'm starting, to reach that peak physically or emotionally, and not being connected, and not having, like you said, those foundational, the physical realm of connection and alignment. That's not going to even be or feel physically possible to do, to recognize those things.
Yeah. So when we are able to effectively communicate our thoughts, feelings, wishes, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I definitely am very in tune with nonviolent communication. There is a very good way to resolve conflict through empathy and compassion, and come to resolution where everybody's needs are met.
Yes. I feel like
And
from the other places, you're coming from a lower vibrational, fear or hate-based place, versus the other, from, like you said, the empathy, the love, the compassion. I feel like we've been programmed as a society, not to generalize here, but that's how you feel, that's how you are heard, and I'm like, no, that's, and at that point, I feel like biologically, energetically, we're programmed to disconnect. I'm disconnecting. I'm not hearing you.
I love that you just said that, because it brings me to a segue where it's not only our ability to speak our needs and our truth outwardly, but inwardly. And so, when I think about someone who may use substances and think, oh, it'll be fine this time, I can control it this time. Is that really your truth? Or is that not something that is realistic?
Right.
What about when we have lived in environments where there's a lot of gaslighting, especially with adverse childhood experiences, where parents might say, nope, that didn't happen that way, it happened this way.
Right. I don't know what my truth, or is. I've never been able to trust my intuition, because I've always been made to question that at every moment.
And then when we become adults and we get into relationships where that same behavioral cycle continues,
Yes. And with my clients where I do so much work with attachment trauma, like we talk about, because I'll have somebody in front of me all the time. I just like feels energetic. Like I just attract those types of relationships or those type of women or those type of men or whatever. And I'm like, no, no, you're not this human magnet that's attracting it. I said, but you are, it's familiar. Familiar feels safe. That doesn't mean that it's what you deserve, but we accept what we think we deserve. And so then our cycle continues. I find myself in those, what's normal, has been predictable for me. I know how to navigate those situations. The other ones feel unsafe.
Yeah, I think the deserving part is really key there, because vibrationally, if I am someone who uses alcohol, I'm not going to use alcohol with people who may tell me I'm drinking too much. I'm
Yeah.
going to use alcohol with people who are drinking as much as I'm drinking, or drinking and driving when they go home, or there's a lot of different scenarios that I could, give for that example, but vibrationally, that's not very high vibrational.
Mm-mm.
But we're also, like you said, not going to put ourselves in a situation that would be more uncomfortable, where somebody might call us on that behavior or say, hey, this might be more serving. And then we might feel shame or guilt because we weren't doing it a better way or a different way.
Yeah, that takes me back to when we were at the beginning of this today, was being wired for connection. And I feel like I'm getting a sense of connection if I'm drinking with that group of people and we're all there for the same, I feel connected with them. And it's like if I would be drinking with others that I know would question the amount that I'm drinking, or how that's impacting me, I'm not going to feel connected.
Well, and I know that there are schools of thought on what is actually the gateway, quote unquote, drug to substance use, and it's connection. And I know Russell Brand does talk a lot about that on his podcast, in his book. I do believe that, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're 11 years old, 12 years old, maybe even younger, and somebody offers you, whether it's marijuana, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's alcohol, you don't want to be the odd person out.
Yeah.
And
If they don't have a network of connection elsewhere, even more vulnerable to those moments.
Yeah. And what's heartbreaking is, on more than one occasion, I can recall people who were 12, 13, 14 years old, whose parents were using heroin with them.
Yep.
And what child who wants attachment and validation and acceptance by their parent is going to say, you know what, mom, you know what, dad, that's just not Flintstone healthy,
Right. And then, as every topic or subtopic that's came up, you fast forward that person into adulthood and what that looks like.
Yeah. So bring in therapists, right? So we have the talent of sharing space and offering voice and hearing. And so I do think energetically, in the influence that we have to help somebody walk their journey is really important. And it's not just therapists, it's, people who are in the church sometimes, nurses, teachers, doctors, anybody who's in the helping field, who's offering a safe space for somebody to be who they authentically are, is part of this healing journey.
Yes. I know we're getting close to our typical time of trying to wrap up, and I know at the end of every episode we always touch on just different techniques, different realistic things that our community can do. So therapy, we always are pro therapy for all, everybody. You get therapy, like, because that we can hold that space for you that otherwise, you know, you don't feel like you have that anywhere else, and able to, if you don't know what it is, you know, to be your authentic self, it's a space for you to figure that out.
Yeah, because it can be very exhausting to constantly live in a trauma response.
Yes.
And quality of life is not fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
No. No, that's a biological response that's supposed to serve a single purpose whenever it's needed, not a place of functioning and living all day, every day.
Yeah, yeah. And so some things that can help us, and I know Amanda always loves, you know, essential oils. And do you use essential oils as well?
I'm not as in depth as Amanda, but I do. I keep certain ones on my desk. I have like rollers on my desks and things.
Awesome. So eucalyptus.
I love
I don't know. Oh my goodness, I
like
love the smell of it. I know.
not even when I'm congested, but that's where I go whenever I smell eucalyptus. I love it so much.
Yeah. I'm one of those weird people that really loves the smell of Ben Gay too.
Any of that, like the yeah.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
a muscle, like, I don't know, it's like a roller thing, and it smells just like that, but it smells so good.
Yeah. So it is both stimulating and soothing. It is used and known for using or removing excessive moisture. I know I have a friend who like actually has some hanging in her shower. So like when she showers, it's in, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that's just phenomenal. So it helps with our respiratory system. So the fact that you would intuitively touched your chest is on point. It increases our oxygen in our red blood cells. It does have antiviral qualities, and so it can help actually fight symptoms of a common cold. So eucalyptus is wonderful. It can be blended with lemon, peppermint, rosemary, and lavender. And the next, I just love this scent as well, is peppermint. Like I just love peppermint. It is usually in a starter kit. So depending on where you might get some essential oils, it's usually kind of one of those like, I guess 101 kind of oils. It can be used for headaches. I have a wonderful roller that I use for headaches that I put on my temples when I've gotten migraines and headaches. It can clear sinus congestion. It actually helps with digestive difficulties. So
like, there
after,
it is. Well,
yeah,
and I was like, I swear, like, not just nausea, but I put it like on my lower stomach before because I can have digestive stuff, and it's so good. Or I found myself going to and getting like a mint piece of gum if I'm not.
yeah.
Yes.
There's a reason I think probably why the service industry has peppermints on the way out, right?
Yeah.
And it does have pain relieving, anti-infectious, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory. So there's a lot of really great values in peppermint. It blends well with lavender, eucalyptus, ginger, and lemon. And I probably next to lavender, my next all-time favorite would be chamomile. And chamomile is, you know, great in tea, right? We know, drink some chamomile tea and you'll be able to go to sleep or be relaxed. It does help calm the nerves. It relaxes muscle spasms. It can help relieve pain. It can help us when we have high frustrations or anxiety. It is connected to the clear blue sky. So again, if we think about what we had talked about earlier in terms of the color blue, ether being up in the clouds, so chamomile clear blue skies, all connected. Love it, love it, love it. It blends well with lavender, rose, and lemon. Some of my favorite crystals that I actually have for the throat chakra, I have Amazonite. I actually intuitively got this. It was part of some rough times, and probably one of the first crystals that I didn't know what it was until afterward, that I just was in the store and picked it up, and I read up all about it, and I was like, yeah, that seems about right. So it helps soothe anxious dispositions, self-destructive thoughts. It helps you when you are stuck with low self-esteem. It is connected to the feminine, and it works against habits of self-neglect. So it helps you put yourself first, which I think is really
Amazonite.
Amazonite, not to be confused with Amazon, which is my favorite other thing, but
online place. That one, I'm sure.
Another beautiful blue crystal is Sodalite. So Sodalite. It is a very calming crystal. It actually can help if you have hoarseness. So if you have like bronchial laryngitis, things like that can help with that. It helps with logical thinking and problem solving, and it helps bring the perspective of the glass half full. So very interesting to see that. Blue Kyanite, blue Kyanite, is a very high vibrational stone, and it is where our truth comes and where we can communicate our truth. So again, very connected to the throat chakra. It is really great for helping with communication if we're speaking our truth, right? And it will give us intuition, knowledge, lyrical flow, and help us with self-exploration.
I was looking at my crystal collection as we're going through this, and I only have, and I think this is a fluorite is what I have. And I think that's the only blue crystal that I have. So it's very eye-opening for me. I need more.
I think I saw on TikTok, and I did end up buying the cases. Beautiful cases to like store things in. And I have stuff everywhere, but then I also have stuff that's just saved for, Reiki and special occasions. And yeah, I have.
I might need more. I need a more secure place of keeping them so they're not rattling against each other so much. But I definitely now I need to go to my shop, and I definitely need more of the blue. I need more to connect and things with the throat chakra.
Yeah. Some yoga poses would be a shoulder stand. And so this is from lying on back, and then you would use your hands to kind of support your hips to be lifted in the air with your feet straight up. And from a shoulder stand, I like to go into the next one, which is Plow Pose, where your feet would come behind your head then. And those two poses usually in sequence would go together. And so a really great way would be to come out of plow into shoulder stand and back into. Another favorite pose that has lots of variations is fish pose. So the full position would be lying on your back, but you are on the crown of your head. So your neck and your throat are open. Lots of variation to that with using blocks and bolsters. If being on the top of your head does not serve you. And then the mudra that I'm going to talk about, we will end today because the sound of Om. So we will do our mudra, and then we will together say 3 Oms. Is that okay?
Sure.
Awesome. And so our mudra is Grantita, and it means not. So we basically, it's probably one of the easier mudras. So you just put your hands together, and then you take your index finger and your thumb, and your index finger and your thumb. And so you're creating 2 knots there. And so this mudra is then held in front of your throat chakra. And because trauma, sometimes we feel like we're stuck in knots. This is a really great mudra to kind of help release the sense of being bound, untying those things that may bind us. It helps us with clarity in our communication. And so it is really great to end this practice then. We can take an inhale together, and on the exhale, we will Om. So inhale through the nose. Oh. Namaste.
So good. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
More, but I will just keep thanking you and thanking you and thanking you for helping get this information out there, because it's, quote, I don't like the word unconventional, but people, it's not out there as much as other things, and it's so powerful. And so thank you for joining us, continuing to bring us such helpful information for as we go through this series.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, all right, everyone. Thank you for spending this time with us. Next week, we are scheduled for another Man Down Men's Mental Health series, but I need to link up with Amanda to make sure, see if we're still going to be doing that, because our other fellow co-host is her husband. So I think they both need to be both on maternity, paternity leave together, but I'll follow up. We'll see if that's still on the books or not, so stay tuned. But that's what we have for next week. We may be switching it up, but don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. Please leave us feedback and comments, because if there's even topics that we haven't touched on yet that you would love for us to see if we have any resources or connections, or even if you would like to be a guest and join us yourself with a topic that you're passionate about. But as always, take care. And thank you for joining us. Bye, everyone.